What if the most valuable asset on the planet wasn't something you could hold in your hand, like gold, but something you could compute? What if we could back a currency with pure, verifiable intelligence? It's a wild idea, and it's the central question from an analysis by Sajic's Apothecary that we're digging into today. This is the story of the Bittensor network. So let's just put the question right out there. Can you actually back a currency with intelligence? I mean, forget digging ore out of the ground. What if the real value, the real mining, was happening in a network of mines, of artificial intelligence? That's the whole experiment here. Now, as we go through this, you're probably going to notice the look and feel here is, well, it's very specific. It's stark. That's on purpose. We're actually following the official OpenTensor brand guidelines. And why would we do that? Because the design tells you something crucial about the network's philosophy. It's minimalist, it's precise, and it's totally uncluttered. It's a system that's all about signal, not noise. And that's exactly the lens we need to see it through. So here's the plan. First, we'll talk about this whole new idea of value. Then we'll look under the hood at the engine that creates it. We'll follow the money, the flow of its currency, TAO. Then things get interesting. We'll look at a huge economic shock that's baked right into the system. And finally, we have to talk about the risks, because they are very, very real. All right, let's jump into part one, a new form of value. This is all about the big shift, from mining physical stuff to mining, well, mines. Okay, so what is Bittensor, really? The easiest way to think about it is like a giant global marketplace for intelligence that nobody owns. Anyone from anywhere in the world can plug in and offer an AI service. And how do they get rewarded? It's simple. They get paid based on how good their contribution is, as judged by the market itself. Pure competition. And this quote from Sami Kassab just nails the core belief here. The bet is that if you get the incentives right and you let everyone compete openly, a decentralized network can actually create better AI than the big centralized giants can. It's using free market principles to build the world's best intelligence. So how does this intelligence engine actually tick? Let's get into part two. The source material uses these really cool alchemical metaphors to describe the moving parts, and they actually make a lot of sense. It all boils down to these three roles. First, you've got the subnet. Think of that as the crucible. It's the playing field for one specific AI job, like image generation or data analysis. Then you have the miners. They're the producers, the alchemists, all competing to do that one job better than anyone else. And finally, you have the validators. They're the arbiters or the judges. They test the miners' work, rank it, and hand out the rewards. That's the loop. That's the engine. Okay, on to part three, the flow of TAO. This is the economics, the tokenomics. This is the lifeblood that pulses through the entire network.
Now, this is super interesting. Bittensor has a two-tiered economy. You've got TAO, which is the main currency. It's got a fixed supply of 21 million, just like Bitcoin. So you can think of it as the network's digital gold. But then each subnet has its own unique token called alpha. Think of alpha like a stock certificate for a specific AI product. And how do you get it? You stake your TAO into that subnet, which is basically you placing a bet and saying, I believe this AI commodity has real value.
And they just made a massive change back in November 2024. It's a game changer. Rewards aren't just about price anymore. Now, they're driven by something called net TAO inflows. All that means is the system looks at how much TAO is being staked into a subnet versus how much is being pulled out. It's a clever way to reward long-term belief and genuine utility over short-term speculative hype. You have to prove you're valuable to keep capital. And that new system is absolutely critical for what comes next. Part 4, the Great Filter. This is where the pressure gets dialed up to 11. There's a massive, pre-planned economic shock coming, and it's designed to put the entire network to the test. So right now, every single day, the network creates 7,200 new TAO tokens. That's the reward pool. That's the fuel that incentivizes all the miners and validators to compete and do their work. But in December 2025, that number gets chopped in half. Just like that. Overnight. This is the halving, what the source calls the Great Filter. The economic rewards that power everything are about to get slashed. And if you look at this timeline, you can see this is all by design. It's a deliberate step-by-step process. First, they made emissions market-driven. Then they tweaked the system to reward real conviction. And now they're about to introduce this massive scarcity shock. Every step is meant to make the system stronger, more resilient. So what's the point of all this? Well, it's expected to create a truly Darwinian shift. When the rewards are suddenly cut in half, there's just no more room for subnets that don't have a real, valuable product. The theory is that the speculative money will run for the hills, and all the capital will flood into the projects that provide undeniable, real-world utility. It's survival of the fittest, coded into the economy. But an experiment this ambitious doesn't come without huge risks. So for our last section, we really have to listen to what the source calls the alchemist's warning and take a hard, sober look at the dangers here. And the source material doesn't pull any punches. You've got massive market risks, like insane price swings and arguments that its valuation is way ahead of its fundamentals. You have huge adoption challenges. I mean, how do you convince people to use your stuff when they can just use Google or OpenAI? And then you have the usual suspects, regulatory crackdowns, technical bugs, security holes. The list is long. And this isn't just theory. The analysis explicitly states that if real-world demand for these AI products doesn't show up in a big way after the halving, we could see the price of TAO fall by 50 to 80%. Let that sink in for a second. The stakes are incredibly high. This chart really puts things into perspective. This is a classic David versus Goliath story. You have Bittensor, this bold new experiment, going up against absolute monsters like OpenAI, with valuations and resources that just dwarf it. It is a massive, massive uphill battle. Which brings us right back to where we started. Is this idea of turning intelligence into a tradable, valuable asset, is it the next great leap forward, the next paradigm? Or is it just a beautiful, fascinating idea, a ghost in the machine that can't quite survive in the real world? We don't know yet. But the great filter coming in December 2025 might just give us our first real clue.